So this segment, I want to talk about my glasses. Anyway, in this segment, I wanted to talk about LED lighting lifespan. A bit misunderstood. There's a lot of information out there claiming 50,000, 100,000, 120,000 hour lifespans for these devices. And the truth of the matter is that isn't going to really happen. So I went out recently to a site visit where an architect had designed a building with lights that were 85 feet in the air that the engineer put in. And he was running with the idea that these were going to last 120,000 hours, meaning he would no longer be employed where he was by the time they started failing. Unfortunately, 3 years out, they're failing, and they're 85 feet in the air. Secondary thing is there's no way to get there. There's no way to get a lift in the building that can reach that. There are lifts that can do that. Unfortunately, those are not only hundreds of thousands of dollars, but they weigh a lot and they need to be brought into the building. So this particular building, the tallest lift you can physically get in this building that the floors can support will get you 42 feet. So by putting fixtures 85 feet in the air, bad choice to begin with. But anyway, back to what's going on. These fixtures have been in there for 3 years, but they're powered all the time. And as you're going to see in a little segment right after this, that's the problem, because in the LED world, the dimming is built into the fixture. The problem is that when the fixture is off, it's not making light. All of the electronics that are there to drive it are still operating. It's like leaving your computer on 24/7 and forgetting to tell your hard drive to go to sleep and your screen to go to sleep, and basically your computer's running 24 hours a day. So that's part of the problem. Part of the problem is that these things are being left on all the time. The secondary problem is that the thing that will last 100,000 hours, for example, is the actual LED. It's the device that makes light, not the device telling it to make light. So let's take a little bit of a look at one of these fixtures and what's actually going on in terms of the electronics package in the fixture. So this is a typical self-dimming LED lighting fixture. Now in the architectural world, they look different than this. This is a theatrical fixture, but the idea is the same. So in essence, you have a light engine, which is an LED array somewhere inside the fixture. In this case, lensing and other things that are used to shape the light. But basically, this is a self-contained unit. The dimming is built in. Most people put these into buildings and they just leave them connected to power. And when they're connected to power, they're always on. Let's look about what's back here. So what we got back here is we've got a DMX driver and a dressing system. And you can see that you can change parameters on the fixture. There's a lot of things you can do with it. But basically, this module here is telling the fixture what to do. Below that, you'll notice a thing called a fan. Now the fan hasn't turned on yet because this fixture hasn't gotten warm enough for it to turn on. But the fact that it needs a fan should tell you something too. So you take a fixture like this and you look at this part of the fixture, that's not rated for 100,000 hours. The engine is, but not that particular device. The best warranty we've been able to see from anybody for an entire fixture is 5 years. Which will give you some sense of where things are at. And that's on this particular fixture, which is a relatively expensive fixture. There's a lot of LEDs out there, everything from packaged units like this to light bulbs that are LED. All of them have an electronics package in them of some kind. Now this is more sophisticated because it's a theatrical device that's addressable. When you screw a light bulb into your socket at your house and it's an LED fixture, it still has a driver in it. The other thing these larger fixtures have is fans. And what that means is that when this fixture gets warm enough, and this particular one, it's going to take it a while because it's got a nice heat sink already. But when the fan kicks on, that's trying to keep the fixture cool. And that means if the fixture gets overheated, it's not good. So there's a number of things in any of these fixtures that can limit their lifespan. And the expectation of 50,000 or 100,000 hours is not realistic. Now, back in the day when people were used to things like fluorescent lighting, I'm just standing back here waiting for the fan to go on just to see if it will. Maybe the fixture's broken, who knows? Um, in the day of, there it is, the fan's just starting to wake up. I don't know if you heard that little tiny noise. There it goes. Now this particular fan is very quiet. There are fixtures, however, where the fans are quite noisy, and that'll be a discussion for another segment. So back when people were using fluorescent light bulbs and incandescent light bulbs, if they were rated for a particular lifespan, they tended to last that long, and they would fail pretty regularly. If you put a whole bunch of them in a room, they'd tend to fail in groups. With LEDs, it's not quite that way because it depends on the intensity you set them for. It depends on whether they're powered on all the time. Depends on how they're cooled. For example, if you put a fixture 85 feet in the air and it's up near the roof, it's getting warm just by default of where it is. Now that particular job, when I managed to get above one of the fixtures, and no, I was not levitating. I managed to get there through a catwalk. I noticed every single fixture the displays were flickering. There was all sorts of indications of driver problems. These particular lights were turning on and off by themselves. They were randomly flickering. So there's pretty good likelihood that the engine is a problem. Now, the one general rule for LED lighting is it should not be powered all the time. But you also shouldn't turn on and off with breakers, because breakers arc. They create a rush current every time you turn them on and off. So the proper way to control power to an LED fixture is using a motorized relay or some other device that turns power off nice and cleanly. You also need to be sure the light is turned off. It's drawing as little current as possible when you take power off of it. Because if you do those things, you're going to have a better lifespan than you will if you leave it powered on all the time. I guess I'm supposed to tell you to press the like button, the subscribe button, something like that. And if you do those things, it'll make the guys who do our video work happy. And that's it for today. So for those of you who were paying attention, you probably noticed I said that these fixtures were 85 feet in the air and you couldn't get to them, and then I said something about a catwalk. Well, the truth is, there's only one group of 3 fixtures that you can get above from a catwalk, and unfortunately the catwalk doesn't let you actually get to the fixtures, it lets you see above them. So yes, indeed, it is all inaccessible. So this is another example of an LED light source and our intersect computer, which we use occasionally when we need to turn into CIA agents or something along those lines. But another case of this light element, 100,000 hours. These LEDs will probably last that long. This power supply, made in a factory wherever this came from, my guess is probably China. There we go. So this power supply that is powering this thing is the thing that's likely to fail. So if I were designing this into a project, it might be really important that this thing, or whatever power supply actually ended up on the job, is not installed someplace you can't get to, because this is going to fail. And there's lots of things that you could use other than this power supply, because the voltage that's required for this and the current can be reproduced by much better power supplies than this. But once again, the real issue is, don't expect 50,000 hours, don't even expect 25,000 hours. In some cases, these things don't last as long as fluorescent light bulbs because the power supply fails.